the True Success Show. Yes, we got a name. We finally have a name that's a keeper. Every week, Mike comes on. He's like, "What are you naming the show? What are you naming the show?" I was like, "I don't know. So, the True Success Show. Welcome. We finally have a real name. We're locked in. We've trademarked it. So if you're trying to steal that name, forget about it. We're all locked in. How's everybody doing? Happy Wednesday, May 4th. We made it through April. Hope you're doing great. Mother's Day coming. Before we get down that road, I want to introduce the fellas. Mike D, you're closest to me.
Mike Danker, sales coach, sales trainer, Same Team Selling. Check us out, sameteamselling.com.
Who's that? Hold on. I think I got a graphic somewhere. Hold on. Oh, there you go.
Sameteamselling.com. Amen.
Hold on. I think I got a hold on. I'm learning to do this. Oh, there you go. Look, I got all that's good. Look at me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jack. That's great.
Throw it to Chris.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Chris Simpson, 23-year veteran Secret Service agent. Also husband to Anna Simpson of Anna Simpson Fine Art, the incredible artist of South Florida. New studio opening up May 19th. Looking forward to that.
Oh, look at you, Matt. Look, the point meter. Ding, 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 ding. Look, just went up in the Simpson home. That was smooth, brother. That was very good. Look.
Well, we got Mother's Day coming up, Jack, and of course my wife's a mom, and there's no better gift than a little bit of attention pointed back at her. Man, she's been so good to me over the last 2 decades plus. Me traveling the world, incredible sacrifices on her part, man. So I had to take a chance and give her a little shout out.
Oh, it's so good. Look, that's awesome. Good for you. Look, just ringing it up on Mother's Day. That's great. What do you got going? What do you got going on Mother's Day, Chris? You got plans yet? You got something in the hopper?
Yeah, well, we always, man, it's a huge celebration, for Anna and all the kids. We all take her out. We kind of just kind of go overboard in celebrating her, man. I mean, the sacrifices these ladies make as mothers, I mean, it's just incredible. And of course, the morning phone call to my own mother, and I like to try to be the first one to wake her up just to say, "Hey, I love you." It's such incredible. For me, a privilege to be your son. And so just trying to make the day, just go overboard to celebrate these incredible women.
Amen. Mike D, what do you got? What happened on Sunday?
Well, so in our house, we go visit my mother-in-law because that's Angel's mom and Angel's Mima. So Angel's stepmom to our kids. And so birth mom gets Mother's Day and Mima gets Mima's Day a following week. And that's just been the way we've done it all those years. And so I celebrate Mima this Sunday because of what she's done and how she's invested in our kids and just in our lives together. And interesting, 2 years ago, my mom that raised me passed away. And in the same year, I met my birth mom. And so Mother's Day has changed channels for me a little bit. And but very exciting. It'll be my maybe my third Mother's Day with my birth mom. And so that's really wild. And she's up in your neck of the woods, Jack, up there near Ocean City, Maryland, just over the border in Delaware. And just looking forward to it's always neat because we have 52 years of sort of like a blank slate to catch up on. And so it's just storytelling. You know what I mean? It's like there's none of that. You remember when you screwed? No, never screwed up. 52 years, never screwed up. You remember when you said that thing you shouldn't have said? Nope, never said anything I shouldn't have said in 52 years.
So good.
It's all current. It's all live, which is something really neat.
Mike's story. Look, we'll do a show on it. Mike's story, how it crossed paths with his biological mom, was amazing, and some of the there were literally 3 or 4 God moments in that we'll do a show, Mike, if you allow us one day. That story is one of those amazing story. Yeah, it's a crazy good story. And I've been saying, it's interesting for me. Full disclosure, Mother's Day is choppy for me. My mom had early onset Alzheimer's. She was one of the first ones diagnosed in the U.S. and it's just always a weird day for me. It's just choppy. So we'll see. My wife and I will go out to dinner, but it always brings back, even now as I talk about it, it's just an odd dynamic. So I hope everybody get things planned for your mom. Or if you're married, make sure your wife has kids. Make sure you take care of her. Treat her like the queen that she is, right? Look, shout out, look, Harrison, where's the braid? And so look, Andrea, for those who've been wondering, a couple folks have asked for Andrea. She's out. Look, Andrea has a new gig right now. And so 2 things. She has a new gig. She's swamped. But literally the next 2 weeks, she's in Hawaii on her honeymoon.
Nice.
She got married.
That's
recently.
great.
And so she is out on her honeymoon in Hawaii. So
congratulations to the brain.
Amen. So hopefully we suck her
Okay.
back in. Her and her husband Josh, who both worked at GovSpend, they're out in Hawaii doing their thing. So good to see everybody. Before I forget, I want to make sure to remind everybody we're sponsored by i.help. And so hold on, I got a graphic. Oh, there you go. I got a graphic banner, right? So these are all the things i.help does. It's amazing. If you're not following the show, you would know by now. i.help is amazing. All the things you need: web conferencing, online scheduling, social media, websites, podcasts, all your emails, share large files. You can set up your electronic payments. All that is on i.help. Listen, $5 a month, amazing bargain. It will be one of the tools, just like we look at, I always say, like we look at Twitter or some of the social media platforms now as just a core part of what we do. i.help will be that for the next at least 5+ years. For $5 a month, go do it. Still have your Starbucks and spend the $5 a month. Amazing platform. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. Super grateful for the folks over at i.help. Go sign, literally, that's the URL, i.help. So go sign up. Amazing platform. Appreciate them sponsoring the show. Yes. Hey, yes. Today's
i.help.
Yes, go to i.help. Today's topic. So we've gone through this whole set of words, whole bunch of characteristics that we think define success or what you need to have success. And the reality is, some of them maybe you need, and some of them you don't. Right? They're as soon as we go over something, that's, do you have charisma? Well, I know Bob didn't have charisma. Or hey, are they persuasive? Well, Susan wasn't very persuasive. But today's topic, which is intuition, I would say is almost one of the most mandatory things to achieve success, because really what intuition comes down to, it's kind of, I have this, I think the definition, I queued up the show, right? It's like, it says the Google machine says the ability to understand immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So that sounds very doctoral in its definition. But the way I love to talk about it, it's like, hey, do you trust your gut feel inside of you? Or are you somebody that needs the analysis and the analytics and people's opinions and validation? Now, again, all of them have merit, but I would just say this as we kind of dive into intuition is like, hey, if you don't have the ability in the moment where the rubber hits the road, the most critical moments in your life, i.e. when you decided to propose to your spouse, or, if you were going to have a child, or if you make some other big decisions, it's really in your gut feel, or a safety issue. I'm sure Chris will dive in and talk about that. Like you're in places and you're like, oh, my spidey senses are going off, right? That if you do not have a good gut feel, if you don't have good intuition, it is going to be hard for you to get to the next level, right?
Yes. I think that, one of the things that comes up with intuition is that if you don't have experience in something, right? You're a rookie, or it's a buying decision or something like that. I don't know if you have a lot of intuition as far as how to make that decision. You might lean on somebody else that, oh yeah, we buy those all the time. Here's why. That's using their intuition, right? That's a no-brainer for them because they have the experience. But as intuition is something that's developed, right? It's a way. There's a way you get better and better at making decisions in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you're expanding your wheelhouse, right? That intuition is having more of an impact in your life. But if you're making big decisions in your life and you don't have a clue, we had a quote up a long time ago. I forget what we were talking about, but it said, what was the quote? It was, if you try to simplify something that you don't understand yet, you're a fool, right? But if you understand something really well and you simplify it, you're a genius, right? So we want to make sure we're not trying to lean on intuition on something we don't understand, but there's almost like there's something inside you that develops.
Yeah, there's jobs popping off that it's more powerful than intellect. So I just pre-show. Yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Chris, because I know
Mike, you really, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, like intuition is a powerful thing, right? But I do believe it is experiential, right? Like you really hit it. As you're going through like through your life, like you've been given certain experiences, you've been given certain circumstances that you've had to walk through. And as you walk through them, you begin to sense things, right? And you carry that with you and you put it in your tool belt. So the next time you come across something, all of a sudden you've built some type of intuition as to what this needs to look like, kind of intuitively by definition, right? And so you don't have to spend lots of time thinking, considering, analyzing, getting other counsel for it, because you walk through that and experience has told you what this needs to look like. So in that moment, you're capable of making what would be considered a relatively quick decision. which in some cases could be life or death, depending on what you're doing, or it just could be success or failure in your marketplace business. Really, Mike.
I love pre-show. It's funny. We were talking about like and Chris's job, which is so interesting as part of the Secret Service, which is I said to them, as somebody who loves football, it's so interesting this dynamic. Let me bring the graphic I had on LinkedIn. Like, do you pay attention to your gut feelings, right? Or do you need kind of some other analysis? And that the gut feeling, intuition to me are kind of the same thought. But I always use the football analogy. We were talking pre-show. It's like in the world of football, everyone has rules, right? For a play to go off right, everyone has assignments, rules. They have a playbook. Everyone's practice 1,000 times. But you see it happen in almost every single game. And it's typically a star player feels they've played long enough and they do something contrary to the rule assignment. They literally, like the safety's supposed to go to the back third or, supposed to cover somebody. They don't. They use their intuition. They jump a route. And that either they intercept the ball or make a great play and everyone's ecstatic, or there's a wide receiver and it goes for an 80-yard touchdown and everyone's pissed. And so it's very interesting. It doesn't always have to be right, but this idea of, hey, are you following your intuition? Like, are you gonna do what the rule says? Are you gonna follow your thing? Or are you in the moment, especially some of the most critical moments, follow your gut feel, right? So Chris, I'd ask you in your line of work, we were talking a little pre-show, like, can you talk a little bit about how that works in such a very public role that you have in keeping some of our highest leaders safe?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so within my line of work, we generally work within a framework of a mission, right? Like, we know what the mission is. We know what the end goal has to be, which is the safety of the people that we're looking after. But as you can imagine, within my line of work, we're constantly changing environments. Like one time we're at a rally with 20,000 people. Next time we're at an intimate setting with 20 people. Like, it's constantly changing. So what happens is the individual agents, they really do fall back on their intuition depending on where they're at. Right. So you may be scanning, 50 different people, and all of a sudden one person kind of stands out in your mind, like in the spidey senses, like you said, Jack, start to tingle about just one individual. Something's just not right. Maybe it's not something obvious, but something about them isn't right. And over the course of time, agents get very good with experience in seeing things that may be just a little bit off. Right. So I love how Charles Spurgeon defines discernment as not the difference between what's right and wrong, but the difference between what is right and what's almost right. Like discernment is like, there's something it's not totally wrong, but boy, that's just not right. And so your intuition in that moment tells you, let's look at this. Let's keep focus on this. Let's pay attention to that. And this can happen like in a moment, right? Like literally could be in a split second. And so the men and women in my job, that we really do have to develop over the course of years, the intuition, and it makes us a better and more efficient and quicker acting agent. And I've just seen it play out over and over again.
Can I ask one question in that world? Like, do you have something you could share with folks that when it works out great, everyone's happy? What is the protocol, perhaps, if you're able to share? Like, hey, if someone maybe goes off script or whatever, and maybe it doesn't, what they thought they saw, or what, what I mean, when they kind of maybe went again off whatever the established rules are, how does your organization both, in an organization, you don't want to limit people, have them be afraid, in the football world, you don't want people thinking, you want them to follow their gut. They got to respond to what's happening. Where's the balance of like coaching somebody up and like, ooh, that well, versus, but also giving people the power, the authority to follow their gut?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have a motto, it's called Worthy of Trust and Confidence. And what we do is we intentionally invest in every agent in the agency, certain trust and confidence. So if they act, now we're just going to fill in the gap. Like, we're not going to question, even because it may be off script of what we wanted to do. If they're acting, we're just going to fill in the gap, like automatically. Like we'll go over it after the fact in the post game, and because we talk about kind of what went down, what we could have done better, et cetera. But in that moment, we're just going to say, okay, they're acting. We're going to fill in the gap beyond that. No questions asked. Every man and woman here has been invested with trust and confidence, and we're going to go off of that. It just doesn't matter if it falls out of what the expectation was, because quite honestly, there's never a day where there's expectations. We're just going to go into it, and we're going to do our job, and whatever that looks like, however the cards fall out, that's what it looks like. And we'll talk about it after the fact, how we could have done better. But in that moment, each man and woman is responsible, and we're going to play off of them as a professional.
That's great.
I love that, just fill in the gap, because it's funny when the sports commentators call it a blown coverage, but it's really not a blown coverage. It's somebody went off script and the other guy, usually there's a backup plan to fill in the gap, right? But somebody missed it, or they because it's a boring play when they fill in the gap. It's like, ball was thrown, ball's knocked down. No play. Somebody went off script anyway, but they filled in the gap, right? But it's the other side when they went off script. The other team, because think about this, we could sit back and go, they're off script. This isn't going to go well. That's not, that's not an option, right? That's not a viable option, but that is something that plays out a lot, in our work world. They're not on script. Well, what are you doing to fill in the gap?
Yeah.
Right. I love that attitude. It's a great attitude, right? It's a great attitude to have.
You can really tell the teams, the shifts that work together for a period of time. Like, you can really tell the difference there, because it's almost automatic, right? Like, you don't have to say, hey, fill the gap. Like men and women, they're just doing it. And the teams that work consistently together, they begin to just intuitively see what's happening and fill it. Yeah, like you don't have to coach them. Like they know exactly what to do, and that's why working and training and learning together is such an important part of this. Because Mike, you started this whole program with experience, right? Experience is what teaches us, and we put things in our tool belt. So when you need it in a moment, you don't have to think about it. You just pull it out and you do it, right? And that's what that looks like.
Yeah, and again, too many football analogies, but that is like we watched in the Super Bowl how really Cincinnati lost because in the second half it was all those sacks, right? And what you see in football, the offensive line does just that. Like, the offensive line is a set of rules, those 5 or 6 folks, and they all have rules. And with the best offensive lines, when something happens, a la when the defense blitzes, they're able to change, and the other guy next to them knows, oh, he's flaring out. I got the hole. When the best offensive lines work as a team, no sacks. You clearly saw in the Super Bowl, in the biggest stage ever, that offensive line did not work together long enough. And the second half, the Rams figured out, hey, well, here's how we get through that, and you could see it on display in the biggest moment, not working well. Can I ask really personal? So, Mike, I'll go to you first. Like, what do you guys use to? There's times you follow your gut feel. Is there any triggers in your head? And times when you're like, oh, I'm going to go get more data. I'm going to get more analysis. Oh, I'm going to go seek opinions and other validation. I'm going to go get some other feedback. Like, what do you have a model in your head, or you have a time when it strikes you and maybe one played out well, maybe one played out different? Like, how do you tell your son, daughter of 22-year-old coming out, when do I trust my gut and when do I follow the rules? Like, what would be a paradigm framework?
My snarky answer to a 23 to 25-year-old is don't. But but that's snarky. That may not be accurate, but I know that's my snarky answer. But when there's this weird thing that I've learned. There's this weird thing that the words that Chris used were confidence and trust. There are times in my intuition that I have confidence and trust in my intuition. Like, I like see it, and I have this weird sense that it's going to happen that way, or that's the right answer, or that's the way to go. And then there's other times where I don't have that trust and confidence because maybe I don't have the experience. It's a strange operation for me, or strange, something's going on that I'm not familiar with. And it does take the pause and take a step back and try to read the land. In business, sometimes it's follow the money. What's the play? Where's the angle? All those things like that. But sometimes you just see it and you just navigate. You just keep moving forward with great trust and confidence in your own intuition. But then there's other times where you go, I've learned that, I don't have any business being super confident on this right now. I think, and then I run a list in my head. Who do I know that I think would be an expert?
Where do do you have buckets? Like what are those? Like when do you trust your gut more? Is it a set of topics? Is it things you're experiencing? Like is
Well,
there?
I think in people relations, I'm very confident in myself. I'm very confident in myself if I'm dealing with people, whether it's their struggles, whether it's encouraging them, helping them navigate a challenging part of life. I feel pretty good at that. And I feel the interesting thing is I get better and better the more I ask questions instead of telling. But you know, that's one of the things that I'm maturing, but you know, getting better at it. But it's technical issues, something like a car. I grew up in a car shop. Cars are not the cars I grew up with, so I have not stayed up with cars over the last 40 years. And so I don't know cars. So if something goes wrong with my car, I call somebody. I gotta, hey, I gotta call. I don't even try to guess anymore. I don't even care if I know where the hood thing is. The hood release. Yeah. I don't care because there's nothing. I look under there and like I'm pretending. I know I'm pretending. I don't have a clue. And so anything beyond like with electricity, I've done more electricity in the last 5 years than I ever did in like my adult life. Just I don't know why, but
people yes, electricity no.
Yeah, but there's certain things where you go, this isn't the stakes are too high too, right? Electricity for me, trying to avoid a $55 or $100 an hour bill to solve some problem in my house, I could die. You know what I mean? Like literally, because I had a friend in my life that got electrocuted and died. That's always in the back of my mind. That's like, okay, electricity killed somebody I knew, right? So I take it very, so all of that, and it's interesting. That's so critical to think about. What is driving our intuition? What are some of the blind spots that our experiences have created? What are some of the fears that our experiences have created? And then where have we had enough of a success or a good run that we're like, hey, I know this, right? And the other part is, I know enough about this that if it goes sideways, I can handle that too, right? The blitz off the left edge, I can handle that, right? If I'm not me, I can't. But if I'm an all-pro quarterback that my name as a quarterback, I can handle that because I'm used to it, even though it went not the way I wanted it to.
Chris, a framework when I'm trusting your gut, and when you are more apt to seek more information, input from others.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, Jack. For me, it comes down to emotional state. Right. So as we go through life, we have the ups and we have the downs, right? Like it's kind of like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're at the top, right? And sometimes you're down on the dip. Well, I found that like over the course of my life, when I'm in the dip, in other words, it's a season of life, whether it be a highly emotionally charged state that I'm walking through, whatever, it's in that moment I make bad decisions, right? So it's in that moment where I go to someone who's not in the dip, right? Someone who's looking from the outside, who's not there sharing the emotional state with me. It's in that time that I go and bounce it off other people, like people in my life who've shown wisdom, who care for me, who I respect as a mentor, whatever it may be. It's in that place where I know I'm not really capable, quite honestly, because of whatever I'm walking through. I'm probably not going to make a great decision at the dip. Like that's kind of like my rule. If I'm there, I'm not making major decisions, life-altering decisions there. That's the moment where I go to someone outside of that. Hey, brother, look into this for me. Let me bounce this off of you. And let me see what this looks like to you, because here's where I'm at. When I'm up here, different story. But when I'm down here, don't make big decisions in the dip. Don't trust your intuition when you're emotionally charged. That's when you go to someone who's not there with you and ask them to take a look for you.
Yeah, that is great advice. Right. I think anytime it's funny, anytime you just forget intuition for a second, but if you're having a communication with somebody and anytime you sense yourself, your heart beat, not in your gut, those are never good things. You probably want to do the opposite of whatever first comes to mind. We rarely make great decisions in that moment. Totally agree. Yeah, I would say to folks, what's really interesting is the thing I would just always think about when folks are most of the time I would say don't make immediate gut altering decision quickly, except for I would just say there are those moments in my life there's two variables I think you'd always follow your gut feel, your intuition. One, in any safety concern, God's put in us some sense sometimes. You're like, ooh, that person, this situation, this place, you just feel this weird feeling. You're like, this just doesn't feel safe, right? And so encourage you all the time. You'd rather be safe than sorry. Just get out, and the worst thing to happen is that you're extra safe, and maybe you miss something, that you really love. But anytime that happens, just encourage you to trust your gut. And then secondly, if it's a big life decision, I always tell folks, like, wherever your spot is, where you find peace, whether that's on the beach, or if you go out kayaking, or if you walk in the woods, or whatever your thing is, you want to go shopping, or whatever your thing is where your head is clear, just encourage you, if you're in those moments and something's going down, I just encourage you that's when you would trust your gut. There are times when I probably made a half a dozen decisions, and it was like, it went against what everyone was saying, and even my wife, and I'm like, I was just so convicted when I was, slowed down, thoughtful about it. I was like, it just overwhelmed me. I'm like, listen, even if this goes south, I can't ignore it, right? One time I had a career option, just really quickly, quick story. So I was deciding between a well-paid career job, 6 figures plus, or an entrepreneur opportunity, which was almost no pay, right? And so my wife, was like, oh, you want to take the job? And that was a big variable. But literally, went over about 3 days. My place is the beach and kind of solitude, and went to the beach a couple times. And there's not one time, and when I did that, I ever felt I should take the job. And it was just very convicting. And I had to deliver that message to a couple people. They were freaked out. But it turned out well, but it didn't even matter if it didn't. It washed over me like so convincingly. You know what I mean? Like there's no second guess, right? It was just like, I was ready to go. I didn't care how it came out, but it was just washed over me. And then I would just add, lastly, if you're a person of faith, praying over that and being like, God, I need your direction. This is where I'm going. Unless you pivot me, nudge me, alter me, I'm going down this road. So if you don't want me to, please put up some blockades.
It's so awesome, Jack. As I was getting ready for the show, I did some reading, and the verb, we know the noun divine or the adjective divine, right? It's that, oh, that's divine. That's divine. Well, it's a verb. To divine is to literally to solve something, figure it out, sort of beyond you, right? It's like I divined that solution. What does that mean? Well, I went beyond me, right? In the world, we call it above our pay grade. I went above my pay grade, and the solution came upon me. And that's happened. I've gone like blank slate, and then just seen the answer. And I know that Denker cannot take credit for that. I have to give credit somewhere else. And I love that verb divine. I literally want to be a diviner. I want to be a diviner, someone that solves life's problems under the divine influence, right? Just want to solve those and help other people, like to divine better. That verb is so powerful. And there's another really cool book I read called Blink. One of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell, and he wrote a book called Blink. And the subtitle is The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. And all of the stories, he his books basically have a common thread, and they're usually sort of like different stories, all different setups and backgrounds, but it's all about this concept called thin slicing, right? That's what we're doing so often, is processing the world, but we're making a decision based upon just a compilation of a bunch of tiny little assumptions.
Blink, the power of thinking without thinking.
Without thinking, and it's so cool that you have to do this. We do this thin slicing all the time. Well, the more trained we are, the more accurate our thin slicing is, right? That's why that experience is so critical. Chris talked about a framework. All of that increases the accuracy of our thin slicing to where we almost are intuitive. Like the greatest quarterback that never won a Super Bowl was Dan Marino. And so Dan Marino had two things. He was an immobile quarterback that rarely got sacked. He didn't move 3 steps. He moved a half a step and stayed up. It's the craziest thing. Like, here's this guy he had the knee braces were like as big as my waist, and he never ran. He would have dug ditches into the ground with his knee braces, but he would just move half a step up. And the other thing is, when you walk into his restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, etched into the floor, it says, pick a guy and let it fly, right? And that's that trust and confidence in his ability. He threw some crazy interceptions, right? Brett Favre threw some crazy interceptions, but they're both going in the Hall of Fame because their successes far outweighed their intuitional failures, right? And so we have to realize that. We did a show on failure. Failure is part of the road to success. You can't get to true success of any kind without some true failures, right? Because setbacks and it didn't go the way I thought it would. We go, like when you do that review, Chris, Officer so-and-so, why did you choose to do it that way? I could have sworn it was going to go this way. Well, it didn't. What are we going to do different next time? And so we live and learn and adapt and adjust and navigate better the next time.
That's right. No, Mike, you know what? For me, it kind of comes down to your wiring, so I've been wired a certain way. Like God has created me with certain compulsions, personalities, skill sets. And when things come down to it, for me, I fall back on the wiring. Why? Because that's how I was created to function. Like that's the narrative that I was made to walk and live life in. Right. So when things are kind of going crazy, I fall back on my wiring. Why? Because that's where I'm naturally skilled. Like that's my natural skill set. That's my personality bent. We're all that way. Like when I try to be a Walmart version of Mike Denker, I'm playing out of position. Right. So I'm not going to make major great calls in that when I'm playing out of position. Like I had a great story. Like my wife, she was setting up her new Boca Raton studio and having trouble finding space. I was just finding space, but because she fell back on the way she was wired, like she was very just a persistent. God has created her to be persistent. Like she just never gives up. And all of a sudden, an incredible space opened up for her simply because she fell back on how God had created her to be. Like she didn't try to be anybody else or adopt certain other things. No, she walked in the footsteps that God created her to walk in, and things turned out. And her new studio is going to be fantastic. So for me, it's the same thing. Like I see and I try to adopt other great skill sets of other people and bring them into my life. But when it comes down to it, I've been created a certain way. I've been given unique abilities and personalities and bents and compulsions. And when I walk in that, I'm actually the best Chris Simpson I can be versus a counterfeit version of Jack Signing.
Yeah, I say to people all the time, career-wise, you have to be yourself. Because even if you fail, get fired, it doesn't work well, I promise you, if you, like what Chris just said, you try to be someone else, follow someone else's set of rules, and it goes south, you blame the other person, you have regrets. So in your career, you got to follow your way of doing it, right? Because if it goes south, you're like, I did it my way. Yeah. That lesson learned, right? Because that's how we learn best. We rarely learn during the good times, right? We're, as human beings, when it's good, we're normally not learning. It's when, we get checked, things go south. Ooh, I'm gonna let that one stick. And so I totally agree. You cannot be anyone else. You have to do it your way. And even if it turns out bad, great lesson learned. And then you kind of tweak yourself, right? What's funny? I had another story came to me while you were speaking, Mike, was, asking for God's provision, nudging, whatever your faith walk is, just, hey, nudge me. I was literally in an interview one time and I was like, I'm taking this job. I was like, Lord, And literally during the interview, they asked me a question, about, I don't know what I wanted to earn or . And some things came in my mouth. To this day, I don't know where they came from. And I was like, what? And I heard after I didn't get that job because of that answer. And I was like, can you give me some feedback? What happened? They're like, well, when you said X, Y, and Z, you realize that wasn't even in our universe. I'm like, didn't even know I said that. That was like, that wasn't even my thing. It was one of those times I just hung up the phone. I'm like, guess I wasn't supposed to be at that job. So
it's funny, Jack, you say that. I flew to Orlando once to hire a guy, right? Went through the whole hiring process. Now it was just gonna have breakfast, seal the deal. And as we're having breakfast, I just this is not the guy. This is not the guy. This is not the guy. And he's through the whole breakfast. It's going just as well as everything. I just knew this was not the guy. And here's what's so cool about it is that I called my recruiter on the phone. I said, I've got 4 more hours in the Orlando airport lobby. You need to send me 3 candidates in the next 4 hours.
Oh.
Well, I would tell you, she sent me 3 people. One kid, I was able to say, listen, this is not your job. But let me give you some advice on how to do much better in interviewing, so that I think I gave him something to go off and have a better career. But one of the guys was the best hire I ever made in my life.
Ooh.
Best hire
Ooh.
ever.
That's
and
good.
So it wasn't it was such a great episode of, not that that guy was not a good guy at breakfast. He was not the best guy like there was better waiting for me. And I was just, my mind was boggled through the whole breakfast. Like, I know this is not the guy. I hear you. Like, I hear you. I'm not going to hire him, I promise, and I broke, we broke. And then I hired my favorite hire ever. And it happened later that, because I stopped what was going on, I trusted my intuition on that. And it was so awesome how that went. And the other thing is, sometimes my intuition is very inconvenient. I don't know if you guys have this experience, but I have a sense when somebody's hurting. Like when, especially a successful person, like when they're hurting, they've got the facade up, and I just have this sense like something else is going on. One of my friends calls it the Mike Denker, how you doing? Because it's the second, how you doing, right? It's like, hey, how you doing? And I'll go, well, how are you really doing? And I'll stop everything and like try to stop the world for both of us for a minute. I get blown off a lot. I do. I know something's wrong. They're not going to pretend, like they don't know me that well, or it's not, they don't want to play ball, which is fine. But I've been able to help a lot of people navigate whatever they're going through by being the one person that stepped into that. Maybe other people sensed it too, but I sensed it and I can't avoid it, right? It's like, I'm going to have to step into this one. I got a plane to catch, but no, I got to step into this one and see what happens.
Yeah.
I want to leave folks a couple of things as we wrap. Look, Einstein, right? Your intuition, right? Love that picture. It's so funny, off the Google machine. And this thing of trusting your intuition that Mike just said, cannot encourage folks enough, because again, it may not always turn out the best, but I promise you sleep better knowing you followed your gut feel, your soul, your, what you felt called to do. And again, even if it turns out not great, those can be some of the best learnings. Like we've all seen that here's your comfort zone, and then way out here is your not comfort zone. That's where all the great things happen. Way out here, not in this thing where you're following. And so encourage you as you go down the road to trust your intuition. Chris, any last things you'd throw in on this one?
Yeah, Jackie, you hit it right on the head. Like I was having about 10 years ago, I was offered a position, making about double what I made, and a tremendous offer. And Mike, you hit up on it earlier. I went to prayer. I prayed about it for about a week. I got my wife on board, and we as a couple, we prayed about it. And, we just never got that warm and fuzzy feeling. God was he was not giving us that sense of peace in that. In other words, my intuition, which is what I like to call the Holy Spirit, quite honestly, speaking to us as a family, just never gave us peace in that. And we passed on that. And sure enough, 6 months later, the market crashed in 2008. All the real estate development was going down. You guys remember those time frames. It was very difficult economically for our country. And but when I was having to make this decision with me and my wife, obviously we didn't see that on the horizon. And but because we prayed, because we sat on it, and we rested back on that internal voice, right? That did not give us peace. Instead of just blasting through the door because it looked great, we decided to go with the internal voice that said, hey, look, this isn't for you. Like, this isn't your path. This isn't the season for you. This isn't the door for you to walk through. And because we did that, quite honestly, we were blessed. We could have been doing something very damaging for our family, but on the other side of it, we didn't. We did something that I think gave us an incredible path forward.
Oh, that's great. Mike D, what do you got last?
Yeah, I just realized what Chris was saying, that the more we spend time with somebody, including God, the more we know their voice, the more we recognize their characteristics, the more we recognize their influence. And the more time I spend with God, the more able I am to hear his voice as he's checking me as I go through the day. And we talked earlier about finding a mentor, someone that's been down that road before. Well, there's no greater source of what to do next than God, the creator himself and designer.
Amen.
Amen. I don't have a better rap than that one. That is great. Encourage you again. This skill, my only last point would be, you won't get to where you want to be by data analysis and listening to others. You just won't. It will be some part of that. Those are important. I don't want to poo-poo those. You want to gather data, and you want to get some feedback. But ultimately, in the biggest moments of your life, no one can tell you who to marry. No one can tell you where you should live. No one can tell you what job you should take. You have to find that, hone that, and trust your gut, follow your intuition. Without that, It gets very choppy. The midlife crisis part gets very choppy. Amen. Cool.
Amen.
Yeah, listen, just want to, as we round out, want to encourage folks to remind you we're sponsored by I.Help. Go set up your I.Help account. It's amazing, amazing, amazing platform. We will see you next week. Oh, I got this one. Oh, I got one more. Look, I'm not a Star Wars buff, but I throw this up there. May the fourth be with you. That's a real thing. Woo, we're out of here. We'll see you next week. Woo!
True success.